Good evening. My name is Philip Assis, and I am the Deputy Cultural Attaché here at the U.S. Embassy in Islamabad. I'm very pleased to welcome you this evening to the launch of our series on entrepreneurship, innovation, and growth. Just a couple of housekeeping notes at the top. First of all, we welcome your questions, and indeed, we hope that tonight's presentation will inspire good discussion and questions. There are many of you, and given the large number of participants, we're keeping everyone on mute. So questions will only be taken through the chat Q&A feature of the Zoom. Second, please note that we are recording today's session to share on social media. And finally, after the program, you will receive a short survey about this evening's event. We would greatly appreciate it if you completed that survey to help us fashion other programs that can be of assistance to you and others. With that, I am pleased to turn the floor now to Katrina Fotovat, who will open our program. Kat Fotovat is the senior official to the U.S. Secretary of State in the Office of Global Women's Issues. In this role, Ms. Fotovat leads a team of gender experts promoting gender equality efforts, including support of women, peace and security, and countering violent extremism, promoting women's economic empowerment, and combating gender-based violence. Ms. Fotovat has over 20 years of experience advocating for gender and human rights globally, specifically in conflict and post-conflict regions. She has done extensive gender and human rights work through the UNHCR, the American Bar Association, and other organizations. Ms. Fotovat holds a Juris Doctorate in International Human Rights Law and a master's degree in foreign policy from American University. So please join me in welcoming Katrina Fotovat.
Thank you so much, Philip, and thanks for the applause. I really appreciate that lovely introduction. And greetings to everyone in Islamabad and all over Pakistan. It is my pleasure to be here today as co-chair of the U.S.-Pakistan Women's Council to launch the U.S. Speaker Series on entrepreneurship, innovation, and growth. The Council and the U.S. Embassy are launching the Speaker Series as a way to connect women from across Pakistan with resources, expertise, and each other. We hope you leave these sessions renewed and equipped with information that can help you succeed and thrive. Thank you so much, Ali and Equality Equation, for being the first speaker in this series and for everything you do to help women and the organizations they champion to shine. I would also like to thank Pakistan businesswoman Jehan Ara for joining us today as our moderator. The Biden-Harris administration is committed to gender equity and equality in the United States and around the world as a strategic and human rights imperative. We also know that women's success is critical to any country's capacity to grow and thrive. As a testament to his commitment to women and girls, President Biden signed an executive order in March establishing a new White House Gender Policy Council, which reports directly to the president, representing one of the highest elevations of gender to date in any US administration. I am honored to serve as the senior official for the Secretary's Office of Global Women's Issues, an office that works closely with the Secretary of State and the White House to elevate women's issues as a cornerstone of US foreign policy. Through US diplomatic efforts and efforts like the US-Pakistan Women's Council, a unique public-private partnership which catalyzes private sector, civil society, and government commitments to support women's economic empowerment, the United States is working to support women across Pakistan to thrive economically. We know that women's economic empowerment is critical to a country's growth, development, and economic competitiveness. Through the Council, we have catalyzed corporate, civil society, and government commitments to increase women's access to training, financing, digital technology, and mentorship. For example, through the Pakistan Million Women Mentors Initiative, we have worked with POD, Citi, PepsiCo, S&P Global, KFC, and the Resource Group, Whom Network, and Zafa Pharmaceuticals to catalyze corporate commitments to mentor over 26,000 women and girls in Pakistan. I have to give that applause. Through our Women's Business Opportunity Initiative, we have partnered with We Connect International and Vital Voices to accelerate inclusive supply chains in Pakistan, equipping women-owned businesses in Pakistan with access to training, mentorships, and network, which are critical sources to local, regional, and global companies, while still building the capacity of corporate buyers to source from women entrepreneurs in Pakistan. Through the Council's Future of Women and Work initiative, the Council, in collaboration with S&P Global, Texas A&M, and the U.S.-Pakistan Business Council, are working to study the impacts of the pandemic on women working in the formal economy in Pakistan and to forge partnerships with the private sector to address challenges emerging from the pandemic. All lessons we need to learn. Equipping women to thrive in the digital environment, of course, is critical to these efforts. A recent study conducted by the Asia Foundation found that there has been significant rise in women's digital use in Pakistan, including in the economy, for everything from product marketing to fulfilling orders. Developing a digital strategy, including by building a personal brand, is critical to achieving new customers, competing and thriving in our increasingly virtual world. Thank you, Ali, for offering your expertise in cultivating an online presence, and thank you all for all the work that you do. And back to you, Philip. Many thanks to you.
Many thanks to you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Now I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, who will in turn introduce our guest speaker. Our moderator, who will also lead our discussion following the presentation, as you've already heard, is Jahan Ara, the founder and CEO of Catalyst Labs. Ms. Jahan Ara is the former president of the Pakistan Software Houses Association for IT and ITES, where she spearheaded efforts to, for the past 20 years, to develop the P@SHA brand and create linkages between the brand and local and international partners. Jahan has vast experience in marketing, communications, and interactive new media in Hong Kong, the Far East, the UAE, and Pakistan. And she's a motivator, entrepreneur, and social activist. She's also a strong propagator of extending the power of information technologies to empower and enable communities. Using social media, she has highlighted the needs to harness technology to combat social problems and empower women and advocate for legislative reform. Please join me in welcoming Jahan Ara.
Thank you, Philip. It's a pleasure to join all of you this evening and to be a part of this initiative by the US Embassy to connect American and Pakistani innovators. I look forward to leading the conversation and hearing your questions for our speaker this evening. With that, I'm pleased to introduce our featured speaker, Ali Hoffman. Ali Hoffman is the founder of Equality Nation, which is a social justice innovation space that pools together the brightest minds to build effective, dynamic, and innovative digital campaigns, and to lay the foundation for clients to grow and build online. Ali is a leading expert in digital strategy, social media management, audience growth, content production, and infrastructure building. For the past 14 years, Ali has been intersecting art, activism, and media to create social and cultural change. She and her team directly communicate with millions of people each day via Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, People magazine, The Guardian, Time, and many other publications. Amongst her involvement in a broad range of human rights and entrepreneurial organizations, she's a member of the US-Pakistan Women's Council. Please join me in welcoming Ali Hoffman.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm going to start by doing a screen share and get up the presentation. Okay, here we go. Okay, so today we are going to talk about digital strategy. Before we get started, I thought I would tell you a bit about me and my journey. I, at the age of 21, moved to Cambodia to do nonprofit work, specifically with an organization called the Cambodian Children's Fund. And there my duties were very much focused on fundraising and marketing, but also working directly with the young people that we were working with. We were in Phnom Penh. This is back in 2005, which tells you how old I am. And And a lot of the young people we were working with had been garbage pickers at a rubbish dump called Che. And so they were very much in need of not just access to school, but healthcare, dental care, employment opportunities. So it was really fun to think about how to communicate to Americans about what was happening on the ground in Cambodia, and to increase visibility and awareness. I stayed in Cambodia for 7 years, and then I came back to America around 28 years old. And in getting back to America, I was really, really, really moved by the impact that one can have at the intersection of art, activism, and media. And so I started working in documentary film, specifically on social impact campaigns. So a question that I worked with a lot was, how can I take this piece of media and use it to spark a movement? That work, through sort of a series of incredible events, led me to 2 women. One was named Gina and one was named Brittany. Gina was a beautiful Filipino model who had been keeping a very, very, very deep, big secret for her whole career, building a modeling career in New York, which was that she was transgender. So she was ready to come out and tell the world. And we got together and we basically created a nonprofit and a media company that had this vision to tell a whole new kind of story about what it means to be transgender. Off of that work, which was pretty successful, I started working with a woman named Brittany, who was very, 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 very sick. She was going to die of a brain tumor. And the way her tumor was functioning, it was very aggressive, very fast. And she knew that her end of life was going to be really, really, really difficult. And so she opted into a program we have in America in a state called Oregon that allowed Brittany to choose the day that she was going to die and opt into this program that basically provided her a prescription because she could prove that there was no way she was going to survive her brain cancer. And off of her story and basically 16 minutes of video content, we were able to affect laws in 27 different states. So after that, I ended up working on an issue here in America that's quite big and broad. We call it criminal justice reform. In America, we have a really vast carceral system, a lot of people in jail. And at the time, a group of people were coming together, including some celebrities who wanted to talk about how much the system was skewed against people of color. And so I got together with a man named Van Jones, who's on CNN, and a singer named Alicia Keys. And we all got to join together to think about how to raise awareness about criminal justice reform. And that work, the work with Van and Alicia, was really the foundation of Equality Equation, which is the digital media lab that I started, that's since then worked with clients that range from the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, which is a group of our tribe of Native people whose land was threatened by a pipeline back in 2016. I've gotten to work with Charlize Theron on her work in HIV/AIDS in Africa, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. And a chef named Jose Andres, who's doing wonderful work to feed people around the world. So it's really fun to get to think about what strategy looks like around issues like food justice, HIV/AIDS, transgender justice and equality. And I'm here to bring a lot of what I've learned to you. So this is a primer, and the way I've structured it is to just offer you a lot of questions throughout our time together so that you can start thinking about how to put together a digital strategy for you, whether that you have a business, whether you're a personal brand, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you are a community organization, whatever your work is, hopefully you'll find this relevant. And also too, throughout the time, I'm going to ask you to drop some responses into the chat. So as much as you feel called, please do that. And then we're going to have Q&A at the end. Okay, let's get started. So I wanted to root us in this very basic initial question. What is strategy and why do we strategize? So strategy is a plan of action or policy designed to achieve a major or overall aim. And at EE, we strategize, and I assume you will too, to achieve your goals, to get organized, to understand what you're doing and why. So to that about your why, my question is, what is your why? And I'd love for you to plug into the chat below your response to this question. What are you here to achieve? This might be, I want to change the conversation about, I want to build a huge business, I want to bring the joy of blank to blank. This can be as big or as narrow as you want it. But no matter how narrow or specific your vision for your purpose is, digital strategy is your how. And my hope is that this session will help you get there. So let's talk about what a digital strategy typically contains. And these are core components, and this is not exhaustive, but core components typically include goals, tactics, audience analysis, competition analysis, a brand, it might be a brand brief that includes voice, tone, key messages, calls to action, visual ID, but some conversation about brand should typically be in a strategy. Content streams, which we're going to talk about later, project briefs. If you're building a website, you probably want to include a project brief. A discussion about partners and kind of who are the ecosystem of people that are going to help bring this strategy to life, timeline, budget, and projections. And in this time together, we're going to talk about most, but not all of these. So I'm going to give you my email at the end. And if you've got any further questions, you're of course welcome to not just ask them here, but email me as well. We're going to go into all of these in more detail right now. So questions to be asking in the goal setting process. We begin always at EE with goals. And here, as I read out these questions, if you have responses, I would encourage you and love for you to plug in your responses to the chat below. But in order for your business, your enterprise, your organization, or your personal brand to meet your broader goals, what does your digital need to achieve? What is your vision, your theory of change, and how does this digital serve this vision of change? And finally, if all your hopes and dreams came true for your digital presence, what would that look like? And what would it feel like? And so yeah, here I just really encourage y'all to plug in responses to the chat below, and I'm gonna maybe just pause for like 5 seconds and give you a chance to do that, because it's so important that we be thinking about these as we go along. Okay, cool. Okay, moving on from goals, let's talk about tactics. So tactics are your options for achieving the goals that you've set. And tactics include, but are not limited to, building out a social program, an email program, a website, a text messaging program, and more. But these are like the main ones that we access at EE: social, email, web, text. And we really heavily focus on social because it's really the most cost-effective and efficient way to reach an audience and to achieve your goals. So I'm going to talk a lot about social in our time together. So some social tactics that we use for our client include organic content. So organic content is the copy and the images, the graphics, the visuals that you create just for you, with your calls to action, with your key messages, with your tone. These are yours for you. Curated content is the content that you're going out and getting that feels really aligned and helps you make a point or helps you achieve your goals, and is integrated into your presence. Community management is any way that you're in conversation with your community. So that might look like responding to DMs on social. It might be look like commenting directly or responding directly to comments that people are leaving on your social posts. It might look like responding to questions that people send you via email. It might be having a chat feature on your website. It might be setting up a text messaging program and responding directly. That all falls under community management. Paid spends is going into Business Manager on Facebook and Instagram, or Twitter, or any other social platform that you decide you want to work with, and plugging in an amount you want to spend, choosing a target audience, and really utilizing these very advanced tools that Facebook in particular has built to help you reach your goals through their platform. Audience curation. This is a more external facing tactic where you are basically going out and you are pulling people into your work. So this might be like hitting them up in their DMs. It might look like sending an email out to an organization or a person with a specific ask. And growth hacks are things that are pretty basic, like hashtagging your posts, so that when someone goes into the search feature on Instagram in particular, or Twitter, like your post might come up. Influencer outreach and engagement. This is a broader tactic that looks like going out to somebody or some organization with a larger following and setting up a relationship with them that's more likely shorter term if money's not involved, and asking them to be part of your work. Paid partnerships is when you delve much deeper into how you want to work with them, and usually there is a money exchange in exchange for them promoting or communicating with their audience about your work. And SEO and paid search, this is when you're using Google Grants and Google AdWords to bring people to your site and to your work, and IRL storytelling and engagement. This is when you're going out, maybe you're creating an event, maybe you're popping up a booth with your product, maybe you're investing in brick and mortar, maybe you're giving a speech. These are all different ways that somebody might encounter you out in the world, and through that encounter, you're building your audience, you're building your community, you're working to meet your goals. Let's talk about audience and what I think you need to know in the strategy part of your process about your audience. There's some basic questions you can be asking. And they look like, what does your audience want and need from you? What motivates them? What does your audience like? What are their habits? Where do they spend their time? E.g., what platforms are they using? So if they're very young, they might skew towards TikTok. If they're older, they might skew towards Facebook. If you're only targeting people in a professional context, maybe you want to hit up LinkedIn. But knowing where they are, knowing what they want, what they need, and what motivates them is so key. And on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, there are audience insights tools that you can use. And these are really relevant if you already have an online community. If you don't, you can undertake projects like surveys, and maybe you're identifying people that you want to be targeting or that you are already targeting, and just ask them to answer 5 questions around what motivates them or around what their habits are. And this data really helps you understand how you're going to show up for your audience. So this is a tool we use at a quality equation called the pyramid of engagement. And this helps you deepen your connection with your audience. And we've developed this very much for nonprofit social impact organizations, but it really is relevant to anybody. And I'm going to walk us through how to go from an observer to a leader. But as we look at this, questions for you to think about are, what levels of engagement are required for you to meet your goals? What are you going to do to compel those levels of engagement? And what do we know about the audience and what it takes to move them from one level to another? And another way to think about this is simply, what does it mean to more emotionally engage my audience and deepen their emotional connection to my work? So let's talk about what it means to move up these levels. So an observer is somebody that, let's say, has the lightest touch. So the latest touch with your brand. So they might visit your website, they might see something on social that you've posted, they might attend an event. They're an observer. But if we want to convert them into a follower, we might ask them to opt into a text messaging program, opt into the email program, or follow on social media. And now we have them, right? We're communicating with them in a much deeper way. So we're going to look to move them up to endorser. So we're going to ask them perhaps to sign a petition, to buy something small, to make a small donation, or to share some content. And after they've done that, we know, okay, like they're really into us, right? So we're going to try to move them up to a contributor. So here we might ask them to participate in a multi-level assignment, contribute user-generated content, participate in an event, make a bigger purchase, or make a donation. And now we're going to look to move them up to leader. And here they are now basically the evangelizer for us in our work, which is the ultimate goal. And so they're going to lead others and get others to take action. They're going to recruit donors or participants, and they're going to make major investments of time, money, and social capital. And once we have enough of these, we're like in such a powerful position to create real change. So let's move on from audience to competition. And here I want to talk about what we recommend you analyze in this part of the process. So first of all, you're choosing people, organizations, other businesses that might compete for customers or donor dollars with you. We recommend choosing up to 10, but not more. And we usually do about 6 for our clients. And we break them down based on the following. We look at what is great about their presence. We look at what are their key assets. We look at what is missing, lacking, and weak. And from there, we ask, what are the opportunities for you, and what are the opportunities for our clients? Okay, so from competition, we move to brand. And this is really the fun part. And this is where I'm going to start to incorporate some examples. So the first part of building your brand asks you to identify and create a tone, key messages, and calls to action. So key messages and calls to action ask, what do you want people to do as a result of them encountering your digital? And how is this call to action informed by and realize your goals? If you have multiple audience, are there different or adapted calls to action per audience? And I'm going to show you how calls to action come together in a minute. So let's just stay in the questions. And I would love for you also, as we do this part, to plug in your responses below. So, sorry, your response to the question I posed, which is to describe the tone. So let's talk about tone. Tone really asks, how do your audiences want you to communicate with them? In other words, what do they value? And how can you incorporate that into your tone? And what does your brand represent? And what do you value? And how can that be interwoven into your tone? So for instance, if your audience is primarily 18 to 21-year-olds and your brand is about humor and fun, then your tone might be whimsical, might be sassy. If your organization works in economic justice and has a really strong data-centered approach, your values and your tone are probably going to have to be more grave, serious, data-oriented. So I would love for everyone just to take 10 seconds and describe your tone in 5 adjectives. It might be authentic, honest, sassy, fact-based, and just give us a sense of what the feel of your tone through the adjectives. Cool. Okay, let's move on. Here is what this looks like when it comes together. This is an example pulled from the Charlize Theron Africa Outreach Project. This is an organization that worked in HIV/AIDS, specifically in sub-Saharan Africa, that was started by an actress named Charlize Theron. And this is pulled from the strategy that we did for them. So their tone was youth-focused, authentic, hopeful, uplifting. And I'm just going to read the first 4 or 5. Their key messages were educate, empower, and invest in our youth. And that relates back to their goals, because their goals were to educate, empower, invest in youth in South Africa who are HIV positive. Another key message was tackling HIV means investing in our future, and youth are behind the wheels of social justice. So their calls to action were tackling HIV means investing in our future, be part of it. And here we might say, like, go to www.ctaop.org. Choose to care, learn more, visit ctaop.org. Invest in our future, invest in youth, sign up, ctaop.org. So you get the idea that we're really giving something concrete to people to do based on the key messages and using the tone that we've established. So let's go on to a really fun part, which is visual identity, and how to strategize for creating a really strong visual identity. So some questions to ask yourself are, based on what I know about my audience and based on what I've observed works and doesn't work amongst my competition, how do I want to look? And second, what colors, what shapes, what visual ideas represent my brand best? So let's see how this all comes together. This example is also pulled from AOP. And now here on the left, you can see we started with a mood board, right? So we pulled a lot of cool poster art and graphics that we loved from around different movements. You can see here there's a poster from a really popular piece of public theater. And we showed this to the client, they signed off. And then from that sign off, you can see that we moved into fonts and colors. And so we have the main font, and then we have the headline font. We recommend having at least 2, but you can have 3 or 4 fonts. And then we pulled this color palette. We recommend having at least 8 colors that are your colors, right? And then let's look at how this all comes together. So we mocked up this sample Instagram feed in their strategy. And you can see how all the colors showed up. You can see the main font and the headline font. You can see some of the like graphic effects that are pulled from the mood board. So this is a really helpful exercise. Mood board, fonts and colors, mock-ups of the graphics to help you really start to look at what you want to look like online in real time. Let's move on. Okay, I wanted to talk about content streams because I think this is also just a really helpful way to map what you're going to say and on what kind of cadence, right? So we see content streams as like building categories, right? And these are aligned with your goals. So what we encourage you to do in the strategy process is create sections and describe them, create sample language, and pull visual examples. So what does this look like when it comes together? It looks like this. Again, thank you AOP for being our example. So AOP's goals was to increase digital visibility, engagement, and awareness around HIV/AIDS. So we created these content streams, and this isn't exhaustive. This is just a sample of 3. But we said, okay, AOP, one of their goals is to elevate their partners because the partners are really the ones doing a lot of the work on the ground in Africa, right? So we created a category, a stream that's just partner spotlights, and we showed them visually what that would look like. Obviously, increasing education is a big goal, so we created these stat graphics and showed them, okay, when we are working with these educational tools, this is what it should look like visually. And then they really wanted to build a conversation about intersectionality in the movement. They wanted to talk about things like combating colonialism and stigma, elevating justice and equity, demarginalizing sex work. So we knew that a stream of this content that holds this conversation, which is aligned to their goals, was going to be part of the online conversation they have. And so you can think about this as like, okay, day 1, we're going to talk about a partner. Day 2, stats. Day 3, intersectionality in the movement. And you can apply this to email, to text, to a blog as well. It just really helps you give a map for what you're going to talk about, and how. Okay, great. I'm going to stop there, and see if anybody has any questions. I would also say you can find us on Instagram at Equality Equation. But now we're going to have a really fun AMA, Ask Me Anything, and I can toggle back and forth into this presentation. So if there's a page that you want me to land back on, that I'm more than happy to do.
So thank you, Ali. That was really nice. We have some questions for you here. One of them is, do you have a preferred social media platform to achieve goals, or does it depend on what the goal is?
Yeah, so that's a really wonderful question. I would say when you are thinking about platforms, think first about audience. So how old is your audience? Um, what what is the primary way that you and they want to be communicated with? You know, Twitter's great for quick, snappy messages. Instagram's great for visuals. Um, Facebook's great if you are primarily going to be running ads or selling things. So I would say you really want to be clear about your audience, and of course, be clear about your goals. But there's not a blanket answer. And now, of course, there's also other platforms like TikTok, like Clubhouse that you want to think about. But you want to do your analysis based on your audience.
Okay, that makes good sense. Okay, the next question is, this is all new to me, so I'm not sure how to even form my goals for a social media presence. Any clues of how to start forming the goals for my movement or a small business?
Yeah, I think the question I would ask first is, um, what, before you think about your digital, just what are your goals for you? You know, are you here to sell a lot of something? Are you here to educate people about something? Are you here to increase awareness about something? Are you here to change policy or legislation? Those are words we use in America. Um, I don't know if they're as applicable in Pakistan, but really think about, like, what is your work about? And then from there, you can start to think about, okay, based on that, what needs to happen online for me to meet those goals? So I'd say always start with you. Don't start with the digital. And from that place of, this is what I want to do, or this is what I need to do, or this is what I'm here to do, then you can move into the digital.
Okay, now there is a comment from engineer Sajad, and she says, I have used the Canva to brand guidelines with colors that are youthful, energetic, and innovative. It has helped me shape posts. I don't know, it's a comment, so it's not really a question. Is there any advice you can give?
No, I mean, I think accessing tools like Canva is so important, because now there are so many ways, you know, even as recently as 5, 7, 10 years ago, the only one, it was a lot harder to create really vibrant, incredible visual materials without having a graphic designer. And tools like Canva really empower people to create, in a way that is really unique and special. So I would say, like, good on you. You're very clever. Keep finding and using these tools.
Right. Okay, the next question is, what is the reasonable number of hashtags that you should use to support the algorithm on LinkedIn?
Oh, on LinkedIn. Um, that I don't have a, like, precise answer for. I can say that when we post on social, we we stay on the, like, we stay towards like 10, but like we have clients that will, you know, use up to 20. And so it's really it's more important that they be accurate to the information, and you're not just like throwing a bunch of hashtags in, because it's going to annoy people if you come up and what you're saying is completely unrelated to that hashtag. So I would just say it's way more important that you be accurate to and representative of the work than worry about how many.
Okay. Next question is, how can we reach retailers through social media?
Retailers, meaning like you want to buy a product and you want to reach people online.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think not buy a product. I think she means, people who are selling products.
Like set up a B2B relationship.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's what she means. I mean, that's all she said. So I'm just assuming.
I'm not going to be an expert in this response, but I think, well, first of all, the Instagram algorithm's pretty amazing. So tunneling into that might yield some powerful things. And then otherwise, I think just like extensive searches, and then paying really close attention if there's an opportunity to access reviews, paying really close attention to those so that you make sure whoever you're partnering with is reputable and reliable.
Right. Now, what if you're partnering with users for content creation? How do you come out of cognitive dissonance? In other words, how can I promote my content in the face of the huge amount of content created by social media users?
Like how can one get one's content seen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the best way to ensure that you get content seen is to create something great. Like, it's really easy just to throw things out into the world. And I found that oftentimes what has to happen is we create such extensive streams of really great content. And for a long time, like nothing might get noticed, and then something shifts and it starts to get noticed. So I would say, one, recognize that it can be a long game and really commit to that. And two, use the available tools, like use growth hacks, send it to people you think would be interested in it and would share it. Be proactive and be engaged. And don't, I think like letting go of expectations that everything you say is going to be listened to or go hyper viral is also really healthy. The vast majority won't. And but if you stay committed to creating great work and staying close to your brand, it will pay off.
Okay. So Fawzia Rizwan wants to know that she's on a budget. What are the top 2 social media platforms that she should use to promote her business if she's on a budget?
So Facebook's tools are by all means very spectacular, and Facebook's a really powerful way to plug in a relatively small amount of money, $20, $50, $100, and to see results. More so than Twitter or Instagram in our opinion. Now, I say that knowing nothing about your audience, about your goals, about what you're trying to do, but just as a like quick response, the Facebook ad tools are incredibly powerful, and they have so many users, and they're able to make really efficient use of a small amount of money.
Okay. The other question is, could you suggest other tools like Canva, in addition to Canva, that people can use to create the content?
So as you can see, we use Canva sometimes. Our team also uses the Adobe suite. Adobe, you definitely have to be willing to self-teach and tunnel into, YouTube video tutorials. It's not impossible. But between, yeah, the Adobe Suite and Canva, those are the tools that we stay focused on. We also use Jiffy a lot, and we love that for the clients with whom that kind of visual is aligned. So again, going back to what we were talking about in the values and in the audience sections, just make sure that your audience would be resonant with that kind of material.
Okay, SNLE wants to know, how long does SEO take to become effective?
That's one of those questions that's hard to answer because it's all based on like how much of an existing audience you have, how much budget you have. So it's really hard for me to answer that. And if you have an existing audience, it's faster. If you have a huge budget, it's way faster. In general, if you don't have a big budget, I would just say, like, understand that a lot of it is about building, right? A lot of what happens online is just the result of perseverance, and just really stay committed. I think that there's oftentimes this expectation with digital that because there's so many examples of so many people that have built something, and it might seem like they've built it quickly, that you're going to have overnight success. And because, you know, the virality movement holds that like you can have immediate success, letting go of that expectation and letting go of this idea that like if that doesn't happen to you, then you're somehow not interesting is really important. Like you are interesting, you are valuable, and just give it some time.
Okay. Mohsen wants to know, how do we measure the response or impact of our digital strategy on different social media platforms? Like, how do we know if we're being successful in getting our message out?
Yeah, so let's actually go back into the presentation because the pyramid of engagement talks about some metrics that are really helpful here. Did I do a screen share? Let me make sure I do a screen share. Okay, hold on, let me get back in. Why won't it let me? Okay, it's not letting me, but I'm just gonna read off from what we have here. So you can look at metrics like number of websites, visits, impressions, engagements, number of text message subscribers, number of email subscribers, number of followers. If you put out a call to action, let's say it's sign something or join something or donate or buy, the number of people that you know, that land at that page, that convert into petition signers or into customers. You can look at number of recurring donors or recurring customers, number of user-generated content contributors, number of action takers, number of people that your leaders recruit, and look like the number of hours that people commit to you and your work. That's not an exhaustive list, but it's some.
Yeah, it's a very good list to begin with. So the next question is digital engagement that is not convertible into sales still useful, especially for a small business? Is there ever a reason to step away from digital promotion?
So I would say the answer to that is if brand awareness and brand visibility is one of your goals, then yes. If you are able to hit all your sales goals without digital and you have no goals around brand visibility or brand awareness, then then investing time and money into digital might be such a low ROI that you decide, low return of investment, that you decide you don't need it. But only you know that. And what I would say is, even if from, let's say, months 1 through 12, your digital is not converting into sales, there's nothing to say that starting in month 13, it won't, as long as you're very committed to serving the audience. And this is really key here, right? Like you have to show up for the audience, for the community that you built. So If you're going to ask someone for their email, put them into an email program that messages them consistently. If you're going to ask someone to follow you on Instagram, you've got to communicate with them regularly. And oftentimes, if you're a business, an organization, a personal brand, that means committing to producing content, and that takes time, as we all know. So you really do want to ask yourself, what time do I have against like what my goals are, and is digital what I need to meet those goals? And if so, like how much time can I commit?
So patience generally, and also, long-term vision of what you want to do. It's
And
not going to
letting
happen
go of an
overnight.
expectation
Yeah.
that anything's going to be immediate, and maybe it will be, but like it doesn't mean there's anything wrong or uninteresting about you if it's not immediate.
Mhm. Okay, and how can we determine the demographics for our product or message? Do we research this before going on to platforms or before launching our strategy?
Yeah, so I can speak to the message better than the product. If you don't have any digital audience at all, right? So you can't go into the back end to get insights. Sometimes what you can do is get insights of your competitors. And so I would encourage that. Or you can do like surveys, and you can actually use Facebook's ad tools to deliver surveys to people you think might be in your audience to determine if they are. So you can build a pretty extensive audience profile before you even start posting, which is pretty powerful. But the easiest way is just go to your competition and see what they're doing.
Okay. Well, the questions are coming in really fast. So the next one is there a preferred digital platform to create awareness on environmental issues?
Oh, what a great question. I mean, to me, the first thing I think of is, you know, so much of the climate and the environmental movement has, or the way that you can really emotionally impact people is the visual, right? Like a polar bear on an an iceberg that's shrinking, and like that stuff just really emotionally. There's something very human, or there's something that we respond to as humans to that. And so when I think of visuals, I think of Instagram.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, they say a picture really is,
Truly.
better than 1,000 words, right?
Yeah.
Could you provide examples of effective pay-per-click keywords? I think this person is wanting to understand what pay-per-click really means and what are effective keywords that you can use.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it depends so much on our client. So, we have a client called World Central Kitchen that responds to disasters by feeding tens of thousands of people. And so, depending on what and where they are, we go in and we test a bunch of click words, right? Or a bunch of words. So it might, at any different, on any different activation, look like food versus earthquake versus Philippines. Like I think a lot of what we do in the first 2 or 3 days is just test, 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 test. And these tools are so well designed that you can test. So I would say create a list of 30, starting with your most obvious, and then run tests as much as you can. And then take your tops and then put as much paid as you have in your budget behind those.
Also, Nurul Huda, please look at the answer provided by Mohammed Kashif as to what pay-per-click really is. I think that's a really good answer. So just look at that in the Q&A. Could you give us some examples of what not to do in digital strategy, Ali?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What not to do?
This is a good question.
So I think like avoid going out so wide. Avoid analyzing 20 different competitors. Avoid building 10 different audiences. Avoid building a mood board that's so vast and so big you could create 4 visual identities. Avoid creating 3 tones. Like really, especially in the early days, focus in. Keep it pretty tight, because a lot of what you're doing early on especially is you're testing and you're iterating. You're coming up with a theory and you're proving it. So I would say be judicious in your tightness.
Okay. Yeah, good advice. How can I tell if my digital strategy is aligned with my overall marketing strategy?
Cool. Well, I think I wish I could ask this person for more specifics, or like where they're struggling. A good, like, if you do this right, you want them to lay directly on top of each other, right? And what I was talking about in that IRL storytelling engagement, it really does start to bleed into the marketing. I think what's most important is that they're consistent, they're aligned, and they're like deeply supportive of each other, but moreover that they're deeply supportive of the goals. And yeah, whoever asked that question, I'd encourage you, if you can, just to give us some more information about where you're struggling, and I can give a more specific response.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, this lady says that she regularly coaches startups and she's interested in your advice for the initial stages of startups as they move into the initial steps of strategizing while remaining on budget.
So the question is just broadly, what advice do I have if you're
Yes.
an early stage startup?
If you're an early stage startup, you don't have that much money, what are the initial steps that you should take to stay on budget, the small budget that you have as a startup? What is the advice you would have for them?
Yeah, so here I would say be disciplined in your focus, right? So if you know that there's 8 different ways, 8 different tactics you could use: web, text, email, social, and on social, maybe you have, 8 different drop-down options. I would say, don't worry about all that. Maybe don't worry about building a $15,000 website. Don't worry about spending 20 hours a week on an email program. Maybe you say, okay, I'm going in hard on Facebook only, and I'm going to spend $50 a week, and I'm going to be efficient and effective in my original content creation, and I'm going to supplement it with a lot of curated to keep costs low. But just if what you're optimizing for is low cost, then you almost are going to have to tune out the rest and figure out where you think you can have the most return on investment, the most efficacy, and then really don't get distracted, because it's very easy to get distracted.
Yeah, it is. So how often should you plan or revise plans for social engagement? And is there a tool for scheduling? This person says that they've already tried HubSpot.
Yeah, so I like, so Sprout Social has like a free 30 days, so you can get on there and try that. I've used Sked Social in the past, but like there's like 2-factor authentication processes that have driven me crazy. There's also Hootsuite, but right now I thumbs up Sprout Social.
There is a Pakistani one that I can recommend that Guy Kawasaki uses, which is called Social Champ.
Great. I love that.
You should have a look at that, Ali, and see if you like it.
Thank you, Shahan.
Okay, we have a question which says, how long does it normally take for an individual or an organization to convert people from being observers to becoming evangelists?
Such a great question. I love this question. I don't know. Sometimes it depends on the urgency of the work, right? So World Central Kitchen is able to move people from like observers to followers quickly, right? Because there's this sense of like deep emergency around their work, and deep urgency around their work. Whereas if, as somebody, somebody asked about climate work earlier, like climate work is sometimes way harder because, we don't feel that sense of urgency as acutely. So it can take a lot longer to deeply emotionally connect. And similar with products, like if you're selling headbands, it's going to take more time to build up that emotional engagement between you and your audience, just by very nature of what you're selling. So I think what you can do with this information though, is you can use it to build out like tactically what you want to do, where you want to be, who you want to engage with, so that you're allowing for however long it's likely going to take. And I would also say, like, and I tell this to our clients all the time, like, buckle your seatbelt, because it can take a bit, especially if your audience is narrow. We had a client that was like determined to build a huge audience online of deeply emotionally connected people. But not all they did, but what they did was every year they gave out this really big prize, this $100,000 prize, to a social entrepreneur who identified as Jewish. That is so narrow, so narrow. And so it took them so long to build people from like somebody who just like, saw something or heard something, to a follower, to somebody who nominated someone for the prize, et cetera, et cetera. And we would just have to tell them over and over, like, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while. This is a narrow audience.
Right. I think this is the last question, which is, what is the optimal size of the team that you need to have to plan and execute a digital strategy?
What a great question. So here I would say, having somebody on your team, and it can be just one person, but just having somebody on your team who understands digital is really key. It's so easy to think that, oh yeah, how hard could it be? We just write some things and put up some things and, click send, click post. And there's really, there's a lot of impact you can have if you know how to use these tools. And the people that really know how to use tools, they're not necessarily expensive. We've worked with some really talented young people that just really understand the back end, and the front end, and how to take a quantitative and qualitative approach. So my answer is, like, one good person can be all you need, truly. Like, I have a friend that runs $100 million company that, her social team is 3 people. Like, it doesn't have to be big, but I really do strongly encourage, like, having somebody, even if at first it's just like in kind of a part-time or 5 hours a week or whatever advisory role, with you. And in terms of developing the strategy, I definitely, if you're doing it for the first time, you can do it on your own for the first time, but just do a deep dive, do a deep search on the internet, pull sample plans, reach out to me, have me send you some. But really, like, get a full sense of what's involved and how to do it, and then do it on your own. Or, of course, like, bring in an advisor, if you've got somebody in your network who's willing to help. I know we're a lot of, I think we're primarily like female entrepreneurs on this chat, and and the whole point of this gathering is to empower you. So reach out to resources, reach out to me, because people want to help.
That's great advice. Another question came in while you were answering the last one. So, Philip, I assume this is the last one we're going to take, unless you want us to keep going. This one is, how can digital strategy be adapted for market penetration in the remote areas of Pakistan where internet and literacy rate are both very weak? I'm interested in marketing to tourists.
Okay, so great question. As you can probably appreciate, I'm not going to be the expert in answering this, just because my work in that space is so very limited. But I would offer first, like, understanding what access to technology is available, and then building out based on that. So, if people do have cell phones, even if they're not smartphones, perhaps a text messaging approach or a text messaging program could work. And then it sounds like the strategy, I'm a little bit confused on the question, but it sounds like if the question is how do you target tourists and then potentially take them out to remote areas, that feels like a whole different question, because theoretically tourists would have more access to technology than people living in remote areas.
Yeah, that confused me as well, because the question really was, how do you market to remote areas? But maybe what he means is, if there's not enough internet access, even if tourists are out there, how do you market to them? I think SMS is probably one of the options. Well, that was Ali, the last question. And I think you've dealt with such a variety of questions. I sure learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience has as well.
Thank
Philip,
you.
back to you.
Okay, thank you, Shahanara. Thank you, Ali Hoffman. Very, very interesting. And thank all of you who joined us today and asked great questions, a wide range of questions. It was very interesting. We will be doing 3 more of these in this series, and we hope that you'll join us for the others as well. But let's give one more round of applause. I know we're virtual, but to Ali and also to Shahana for joining us today. Truly, truly appreciate it. We look forward to staying in touch. For all of you as well, participants, just a reminder that we will send oh, Katrina, you're still here too. Thank you. Sorry. Hi there. And thank you to Kat Fodavat as well. Really, truly appreciate you joining us, all of you today. One reminder that we will be sending out a survey. It would be very useful for us to know how this session today was useful to you. And it's a short survey, and any tips that you can provide us to improving these programs in the future. So thank you all again. Thank you to our presenters. Thank you to all of you who've joined us. And I wish you a very pleasant evening or morning for those of you in New York and Washington.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Philip.
Bye.
And thanks everyone who joined us and asked some brilliant questions.
Amazing questions, everybody.
Thank you all. Well done.
Bye.